I'm delighted to welcome Cecilia Skingsley to give a keynote address. Cecilia became head of the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub in September 22. She's a member of the BIS Executive Committee. Previously, she held the position of First Deputy Governor of the Riksbank in Sweden. Most recently, she chaired the BIS Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructure Future of Payments Working Group and was the Governor of the Riksbank's alternate to the General Counsel of the ECB, a member of the Advisory Technical Committee of the European Systemic Risk Board. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Dear gut gotcha? I'll work on it. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you, Governor McLough, and to the team at the Central Bank of Ireland for this invitation. And it's also a great pleasure for me to speak at this stadium, which I've been told is the home of the Irish national rugby team. And I heard they won the last game, so keep it going. I have to admit that I don't watch a lot of rugby, but we do actually steal a little bit of the world of rugby in our work. We also have our own version of scrums. It's in the agile methodology, a very good way to work in projects, and we do scrums. And I would also say that running an innovation hub in the world of central banks, public innovation on a global scale, sometimes probably feels like being in a rugby match. But I think we're doing quite a bit of good, and I will spend some of my speech talking about the innovation hub. And I also think rugby, or any good sports where people are really dedicated and know what they're doing, looking at the speed and efficiency that the players are doing to determine the outcome of the game is very impressive. And if you allow me to make a little bit of a neck-breaking parallel, the same can actually be said about payments. Because if you think about payments, they must be fast, they must meet the purpose, they must be seamless. But payments doesn't always operate like that, and it's still a lot of issues around that. So let me say a few words about that. So going back in the earlier days, people operated sort of more or less in a barter economy. They changed things, and it was very clear this is not efficient. So money had to be invented. And if you think about money, it's a fantastic invention. It's the solution to the need of making economic values portable. And initially money, as you know, if you remember from your school, could be in different versions. Cowrie shells, salt, silk, and then precious metals became very useful because they were rare. And the next real project development in this field was the introduction of coins that was firstly minted in the 7th century before Christ. And the minted coins was actually a big breakthrough because it standardized the medium of exchange, which made trade much more easier. Here in Ireland, coins that was actually first imported by the Vikings have been around for more than 1,000 years. But as we know, societies progressed, so did also the methods of payment. And now we have banknotes, checks, and more recently we have put that perhaps a little bit into the history books and going full into the world of digital payments. So where are we, and what does the future of payments actually hold? And I would like to say a few words about how do we make sure it continue to work for society while still ensuring financial integrity, where this is moving quite quickly, and say a few words about what we try to do in the Innovation Hub to help that development. So people expect more, better, faster transactions, while they still need a stable store of value that central bank money provides. And it really sits there at the core, I think, of what central banks offer, namely providing a good version of money and play the role in the ecosystem, ensure that money is neutral and safe and efficient, easy to use. I think about money actually as one of the real ultimate public goods that a public sector offers to society. It keeps a system of mutual trust going, and it helps. We just use it. We don't think much about it. We just take it for granted. And we want that to continue. And take one improvement, for example, fast payment systems, or instant payment settlement systems is also called. It's fantastic if you think about it. You can in real time make domestic payments from one phone to another or whatever device you have. It operates around the clock, and it has really mushroomed in the past years. So today we have in the world about 75 different fast payment systems, and another about 20 is under development. So this is moving quite quickly. And in most of these cases, if you drill into the details of how these fast payments came into play, the central bank of that jurisdiction often played an important role, sometimes just as facilitator and a host for the meetings for the industry, and sometimes a bit more sort of nudging a bit more, and sometimes being actually quite persistent in moving the private sector from its current equilibrium to a new equilibrium, offering them the infrastructures for the private sector to build new services for the great of the people. Still more of a sort of concept, that's fast payment system. More conceptually, there's also exploration around what's called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, thinking about, okay, what can we do, what should we do to provide the society with the next generation of public money. It can be in the back end, facilitating settlements in a new way, or actually providing it like cash as an offer for people to hold it and transact in it. And according to our most recent data, let's see if this works with me. Oh, that was the history. Now we're in the, oh, this is not easy for you to see. Anyway, it's a survey that the BIS is doing once a year, and it says basically, came out in this summer, 94% of the surveyed central banks are exploring issues around CBDC and preserving the role of central bank money in our financial ecosystems are among the key drivers to most of them. And for those who are exploring the possibilities of offering retail CBDC, that's about making sure financial inclusion is at its very best level and enhancing domestic payment efficiencies. So we're seeing a lot of progress at the domestic level. So going back to that we are in a sport or close to a sport arena, and it's always nice after a good match to go and split the bill for a beer in a pub, either to be happy about the outcome or to comfort one another after the outcome. And if you want to split the bill, that's easy. But if you want to split the bill with a friend that's come and visit you from Germany or Sweden, sorry, Sweden is a bad example, they don't have euros. So let's say France then. Germany or France, cash is it's not an option. This is much more complicated, even if both is using the euro. So as my fellow ECB colleague Piero Cipollone has reminded us in a recent speech, and here I quote him, digital payments in the euro area remain fragmented, and current European digital payment solutions mainly cater to national markets and specific use cases. And he's talking about transactions in one currency. If you want to make cross-border payments involving two currencies, then it gets worse. So let's have a look at the cross-border payment world, which is often slow, expensive, and pretty opaque in the sense that not much choices. You don't really know what you're going to pay in the end, what the receiving end is going to receive, and how much time it will take. So where are we when it comes to cross-border payments? Well, if you look at the left graph there, you see at the lines that keep growing, that is actually how much people want to use, or actually how the value of cross-border payments going up, and this is a little more than 10 years on this graph. So the needs to make transactions go up, but the rails in the way that correspondent banking network exists, that's going in the other direction. So what we've found ourselves in the situation is that since cross-border payments have become what's called a low-return, high-risk business for banks, for regulated financial institutions, they withdraw from that business, and the decline in the number of correspondent banks and foreign exchange corridors decreasing is a worrying sign. So demand's increasing, but supply has decreased. So what can we do to get future payments work better? So nobody has a crystal ball, but we can always plan for it. And when we design future of payments, we need to resolve quite tricky issues. It's about maintaining privacy, keep up the efficiency, and it also needs to be safe, both for domestic transactions and across borders. So let me say a few words about the privacy issue. Privacy is a very intricate issue. It's you can think about it as a social and legal construct, and we, as individuals, we probably have different preferences about it, and then it gets aggregated on a societal and more sort of legislative level, and then you have across countries as well. But I think it's critical that we have legal frameworks that need to protect, continue to protect, and protect what we want to have protected, typically financial data. Technology, we know, as all technology, can be used for good things as well as bad, and in this case it can also, we know, enhance as well as threaten privacy. But working through these things and work with the legislation that we have at our hands as members of a society and reflected in political outcomes, I think that is a very important issue to take further into the future. Moving on to efficiency. So I think a lot can be done in the current systems, but I think also we need to look into new possibilities. I think the governor talked about tokenization earlier this morning as a way, interesting way to explore future technology. Today's technology is for the future. So let me say something about tokenization. It can be explained as the elevator version of tokenization is to create digital representations of assets that you set on a ledger where you can, given that everybody agree, on a joint platform or a unified ledger. And this is rightly designed, a really possible game changer in solving cross-border payment challenges. And it's about really starting over with a sort of a clean slate, realizing that some of the infrastructures that we have in the cross-border payments field was probably good for the time, but as technology move and people's preferences move, we need to move as well. If you go into the world of tokenization, you can do many different interesting things. You can put all the partners that needs to facilitate cross-border transactions, as I said, on the same ledger. You can use programmability, which is about not making sure the transaction goes through until a couple of pre-set conditions have been met. And you can make sure it happens in an instant fashion once these are have been put into place. So one example which it could actually solve if it's well designed is to remove all the duplications of the customer verification checks that has to go through when you do a cross-border payment. So if you go cross-border, cross-currency, and cross-banks, there is a often manual, many sets of checks and controls that has to happen. And even if you've gone almost all the way to the payee and something has gone wrong, misspelling, for example, or a name, everything has to go back and it gets delayed and expensive. If you can put everything on the same ledger, things would probably work much more efficient. And it has to be safe, as I said. And when I say safe payments, I think the best way to think about it is that we don't want the bad people to use the rails for their purposes. And here, the outlook is pretty grim, I would say. It is estimated that if you look at the whole global GDP, about 2 to 5% of the value of global GDP is getting laundered on a global basis. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, 2 to 5% of the global GDP. And if you also take into consideration that about 1% of this huge amount of money that gets laundered is being captured by law enforcement agents, then you realize that, okay, there is room for improvement here. So secure and trustworthy payments, and that's also something that we try to work on. Going back to the German friend in the pub who wanted to pay his part of the bill, I'll use that as an example to show you a bit on what we try to do in our various projects. So typically think about this German friend as he wants to then transfer money from his account in the German bank to his friend's account in an Irish bank. And we want that transaction to be safe, quick, and secure. But as I said, there seems to be room for improvement when it comes to the compliance checks. And one of the things we are doing is exactly trying to look at the payment chain and see, can we, by various projects, sort of nudge the whole process and see if we can work a little bit better. So what does the BIS Innovation Hub actually is? Before, I'll tell you a few words about that before I get into the various projects here, Mandela, Herta, and Aurora, that you can see on the screen. So it was set up 5 years ago. It was a sort of consolidated effort from the central banking community, realizing there was so much going on in the tech space that it needed people to run ahead, look at new technology, explore what was happening, and see, can we build public goods out of this? Basically, follow and understand and not be surprised by new technology, see what it means for the financial industry as we know it, but also see, can we make a better work ourselves as central banks and supervisors? And that's the job, and we have 7 centers in 8 countries across the world. You are part of it as members of the European Central Bank, the ECBS, because we have a center in the Eurosystem. But you can think about the whole thing as a lab. We have about 120 people, and we have learned a bit about what it means to experiment with new technologies and build proof of concept of prototypes in the public sector space. So, going back to the German pub customer, or you can use this for any kind of payment, you have to have compliance checks. Are there any part in the transaction that is on a public sanction list, for example? And are there rules or capital flow restrictions applied to a specific transaction? That is not something we have in this part of the world to any large extent, but it's a big thing in other parts of the world. And the first example I would like to show you here, Project Mandela, which is the upper square there. Compliance by design is the tagline. And that is something we published in a report just a couple of days ago. And it provides a technological solution to basically automate the compliance procedures. It will also provide real-time reporting for regulators and supervisors. And this is something that the Singapore team has developed together with the banking industry. And we are continue to explore whether we can actually build something for a bit of real-life testing to see if we can avoid some of these cumbersome manual checks that is causing trouble in our current system. Another example is the transaction monitoring. Is there suspicious something suspicious about a particular transaction? And electronic payment systems, can they be helpful in helping banks spot signs of money laundering or fraud using network-wide data? And here we have another project. It's quite young, but it's going. Project Herta, which is looking into transaction monitoring. It's been run by the London Centre. And the third layer is about, or again, between the public and private sector, explore what we call collaborative transaction analytics. And this is really about, say, can we break down jointly the silos that we see across the banking system that criminals take advantage of, share transaction analysis, especially in the cross-border activities, share knowledge without sharing knowledge, if you see what I mean, because we don't want to violate the privacy, but see what patterns we can spot together and help chasing down the money laundering and the financial crime networks. And we have looked at it through the project Aurora, which you also see there, tried out a couple of various machine learning. And we can see that it's much easier with new technology to networks. And last but not least, screen, but is Project Raven helping out in the cybersecurity space and using, again, artificial intelligence to reduce reporting and creates various frameworks for supervision, but also collaboration in the cybersecurity space. I'm going to wrap up. It's an exciting, bit cumbersome, challenging world out there, and it's exciting going forward. But I know that rugby, I think also football players, play for the badge, right? And we are the team that play for the public interest. When I meet people in the crypto world, I sometimes say, I'm from the fiat money team. Very proud of being in the fiat money team. I think we are providing a much better version of money than they do. They disagree, obviously, but I still think I'm right. And I think we need to continue to do it, continue to provide a good version of money in the interest of people so they can, get on with their life and do the transactions they want to do. And that is done through incorporating the very best parts, actually, of public and private innovation. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm looking forward to be joined by my fellow panelists. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Cecilia, for your insightful remarks, which set us up very well to go further into this topic.